Elections has techs that are hired to handle elections on election day.
And how are they notified? Do they have to drive to the location?
It depends on what the issue is.
Okay, so I've had talks with people that have been working at the polls and said that there's actually issues that they've had where the actual e-poll books reset. They had issues and they were solved remotely.
Mhm.
That tells me that there's a connection going on. So yes, they may be talking with each other, but how can you assure us that there's no connection through to either the vendor, which in this case would be the no ink
Mhm.
poll pads, and they're utilizing a third-party system called ePulse or something like that, a dashboard, is that true?
Well, that's the e-poll book. So
That's
yeah,
the-
so
okay,
that's
so
where
the dashboard is used for taking, in other words, if they know there's an issue, they have to have some mechanism, means for servicing those issues,
Correct.
distribution-wise,
That's
right?
right. Yes.
So, by the way, that's my area of expertise, all right?
Sounds good.
So that particular thing of being able to remotely access and remotely touch the e-poll books for either resetting or anything else. And by the way, yes, I've developed software for that particular model of iPad, all right? So I understand this thing from top to bottom. When you have connections going on and you have that, what you're telling me is there's a third-party vendor that has access to that information. They'd have to. There's systems, the system information that's being used on those e-poll books, unless it's compartmentalized completely, we have no means of showing that. How can we be assured that there's no connections going through to the database? So the database is set off one place. I understand that the connections made to the database are through Ocean, right? So it's through Internet 2 that you have a connection to almost all the facilities on Rhode Island,
Mhm.
including the emergency networks, et cetera. So the database for the centralized voter registration system is sitting off of Ocean, and that actually connects to all of the Rhode Island materials. So now there's got to be a relationship somewhere to be able to take and update the various communities. That network and that network relationship is now in between the two. In the middle of those two, there's a vendor. Because you're clearly getting information and you have to be able to take and address certain things, but how do you actually distribute it? If I asked you for all of the logs, I would like to have every single log available for all of the e-poll books. I would additionally like all of the system logs for the voter registration system, which should not contain any prior information.
Okay.
Could I get those?
So-
Including everything that's on the poll books with regards to the logs,
I think
what
should
they
be-
actually did.
I think they
Yes.
should be available
So
to us.
and it
Don't
may
you,
be.
Rob, don't you think all of that information should be available?
I don't know enough about the technology. What I can tell you is that you
should
should.
logs. What do you think?
Yeah, so submit,
I think we
for the voter registration
Okay.
piece of it, submit the APRA request to me. For the e-poll book logs, you want to submit the APRA request to the Board of Elections. So the Board of Elections oversees all the equipment.
Okay.
So we're the voter registration system, they're the e-poll book system. So just send me the APRA and with exactly what you just said.
Yep.
And send the Board of Elections the APRA for the e-poll book logs.
So those e-poll book logs, as I understand it, they would be pulled from a central location and it would not be pulled from every individual one. They'd have to be able to pull them. Here's the point I'm making. If there's 422 different precincts, and I'm trying to keep, I don't know the exact number right
I think it's
now.
421, that's pretty close.
Okay, so the number of precincts is around there, and you'd have at least 2 poll books, if not 3, and then maybe a backup or so.
Mhm.
So you'd have some sort of a redundancy in there. And then connecting through to those things, you'd have to have some sort of management system for the software. So even if you're downloading those, if I was to download those and put them on, I'm not gonna do them remotely. I might connect them up and do certain things. But again, if I'm gonna service them, getting somebody to service them remotely, I've had people that talked about those things. And I wanna find out, how do we actually obtain that information and how we can authenticate that? Because you're saying there's a complete divide, there's a
There is.
complete gap.
Correct.
Okay? And I would like to have that assurance.
Sure,
And
understood.
I-
So just, I get
so-
the request, send it to me,
Okay.
send it to the board, and we'll get you what we can.
Okay, fair enough. Now, that's just one last question. What would that cost?
We generally don't charge for APRA requests. We have the ability to.
Right.
We generally do not, because we
Okay.
feel that transparency is really
And I
important. I
thank
know
you for
some
that.
people in this room have asked for stuff,
Right.
and I've never charged anybody in this room, nor anyone ever.
Right.
I can't speak for the board, but so long as it's a reasonable request, and it's within a reasonable time, we do not charge for public records requests.
Agreed, exactly. Because I know it can add up
Yes, sir.
a lot. I agree.
Can I make a statement? I'm very offended by what you said about me. I have worked for 18 years in the town of Coventry for the Board of Canvassers, and I have run a election that is, I've done my job
I didn't
to
say,
the
I didn't
fullest.
say you didn't. What I said to you was it was inaccurate. If you wanna have this conversation
You
after,
said,
we
no,
absolutely
you
can. I'm here
said
to
you
talk to
would
these
not,
guys.
you would not believe anything
I said I don't wanna
said.
hear what you have to say right now. We can talk about this after. This
No,
isn't
but-
between you and I. This is, I wanna hear what
But
they have
you
to
said
say.
it in public. You said it in public. I have done the best of my
You
ability.
don't wanna do this right now, ma'am.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
This, I've
Let's
got
be
nothing
civil
to
and
hide.
let's have this conversation
Well,
that
I
everybody's
have
here to
nothing to
discuss.
hide, and that was very unfair of you to
Okay, you
speak
jumped
in
my
front of
case in
people.
the middle of a meeting and told me that I needed to shut my mouth because I'm associating with somebody who believes that there was a USB card.
Did I let you work twice?
I didn't even ask anything about it. I
All right.
worked the
All right,
polls
so-
and it
okay,
existed.
all right.
Yeah, so
Period.
so, Laura, you're a tremendous local election official, 100%. We can talk about this after.
Thank you.
You are excellent at your job, you do a great job, no question about it. Bill, same. Coventry does a great job running elections for the state of Rhode Island. Rep,
No, I have a very simple question, I'm gonna pivot to the, it has to do with the, after the ballot is mailed to the constituent and they elect to fill out the ballot, when somebody picks up the ballot for them, someone say goes out and drives around, picks up 5 ballots, and they're taking it to the drop-off box. If that ballot, it's only the constituent can check if that ballot was delivered, we have no, backup, like to check to see, well, we know somebody requested the ballot, but nothing ever happened of it. So if somebody grabs that ballot, could stuff it under the seat.
So we do know it's requested, and we do know when it's delivered,
Right,
and then the voter themselves can track that ballot, and we can help them track that ballot as it goes through the process. Now, if they handed their ballot to someone to put in a drop box, that's their responsibility that they put in someone else's hands.
so only they could do their due
That's
diligence.
correct.
So if you go
Well,
to a.
so-
we can too, we can, go ahead.
and also every night, and I think many of you are on that list, we send a list, a mail ballot file and an early voting file to anybody who wants it every single night. And you can see, if you open up that mail ballot file, you can see the name of the individual that requested a mail ballot, you can see when we sent it, and you can see when the Board of Elections received it. So if you have a group of people or a person that you want to see if their ballot has been received by the board, you can't go into our website to do it because you don't have their personal information, but you can get the list from our office and you can see that an individual's ballot has been received by the Board of Elections. You can actually see if it's been counted, because just because it's been received by the board doesn't mean that the board has counted it. They may have rejected it or for whatever reason, but there's a column that shows you when the ballot was mailed, when it was received by the board, and if it was counted, and the public can see that for any voter.
But I think he's talking about it the in-between time.
Right, what I'm talking about is, just say, example, somebody goes to a nursing home, where people don't have the technological ability to check a ballot, and they just hand their ballot off to somebody, it just goes somewhere, and they make a comment that suggests that it's not their candidate, that they could, do something nefarious with that ballot. I know there are, is it a felony if they do that, or is it just a misdemeanor? It's a felony. But there is no way of tracking that other than the actual constituent himself or herself checking that ballot, who may not even be technologically advanced enough to check that ballot. I mean, it's it opens Pandora's box, but when you look at the nefarious activity that went on with Sabina Matos's election, and you look at what happened in Connecticut, it's not out of the room when you have ballot harvesters to do something like that.
Yeah, so, I would argue that anybody can track it. So you don't just need to have the person. If you see that you've given your ballot to somebody, or you know of a constituent that has given a ballot to someone, and you want to see if it's made it in, you can track that ballot. Now, you can't do it through our website, but you can do it through our nightly list. So you can see if that individual's ballot was thrown out or doesn't get back to the Board of Elections. You can see that for any mail ballot voter in the state at any time. A voter can track their own through our system and kind of see the process, but you can also track it each day as well by looking at that column on the mail ballot file that we provide.
Rob, do you have a dashboard or something regarding the nightly list and the number of deltas or changes that are being made? Because obviously it's quite a process. In terms of tracking and identifying differences of particular individual mail ballots, that's a time-intensive process. And unless you have specialized tools, it basically denies the voter, the general public, and like even the people that may have a curious thing, they can't necessarily see that bigger picture of what's going on.
I think they could. So if you're talking about when ballots were received and changes, when the column that's filled in with the VOD receipt date is the date. So if you wanted to sort the column by the date, you can see all the ballots that came in today. And then if they're blank, that means that the voter hasn't had their ballot received yet, and then tomorrow you kind of do the same process.
So you have to weed through on your own, sifting and sorting and identifying and saying this is not this or that.
Yeah, that's correct.
You need to hire a Robin
Whatever the
assistant.
result. So it's quite an intensive process, and for the average voter who may not be familiar with doing all those data categorization type of things, then that imposes upon them a level of expertise that is just overwhelming. And I see this all the time. Our election systems have become way too complex, and the average person is just overwhelmed with the level of complexity. And regardless of how simple you want to make things, just simply having the data available doesn't give that person a sense of confidence that they themselves can see the kind of the changes, as opposed to the old days of walking in on a day of election and watching somebody vote, go, hey, how are you doing? And you've seen that person actually there.
Yeah.
Now you have this privacy that's sort of happening in the broader context of mail ballot and early voting, and it has all sorts of opaque areas that are completely non-transparent, almost impossible to track.
I'm gonna push back a little bit. I think we've been the most transparent. We're actually
I'm
giving
not-
you the list of people. I know you're not directing us, but I think the process.
You've been really good about that.
But the process that we've created makes it so that you know who applied, you know everything about the person that applied for a mail ballot, when it was mailed, when it was received. You can tell when someone voted, you can tell the location they voted in, and we've made it, and you're right, if you're
You're an expert.
No, we
But the
provided a
average
spreadsheet
person-
with
the
the
average-
list of people and when a ballot was received and mailed. It's as simple as we can make it. Now, if you wanna, dive into it, I understand that there takes some expertise about sorting and things, but I believe as government officials, we are to provide the information, and as a campaign can take it and use it however they see fit. You certainly have expertise in this area, but I think it's incumbent upon government officials to provide the data, and then for the public to be able to say, you know what, I wanna do X, Y, and Z with it.
And it's important that the public has options.
Right.
And I think that the same-day voting is still an option, and it's a popular option in Rhode Island. And the early voting, I would push back and say the early in-person voting,
It's not popular.
the same-day voting?
Yeah.
Sure it is. It's as popular as any other way of voting. And the same day, the early voting, I mean,
Where did you get those statistics?
it looks like
from?
same day.
Excuse
What
me?
are the percentages?
Where did that
Rob?
percentage come from?
So for 2020, it was, I believe the mail ballot was 28% of the voters, early voters were about 31%, and then the election day voters were the rest. It was very close to even, obviously with a little bit of disparity, but high 20% was the lowest of the three.
Yeah, I got the exact numbers on that if you want.
We're
I
talking
do
about
too, and I can-
voting.
Voting, yes.
But
Not
But
registration.
that was with
I agree with you
extreme
on that.
circumstances and stuff like that.
Yeah, but
We know historically the pattern is changing. So
But
that's kind of.
it really, I mean, we're surprised it hasn't changed more, right? After the pandemic, it went back to people being more comfortable with early in-person and election day voting.
Why early?
So are you okay with it basically kind of being two classes of voters, the ones who show their ID in public and the ones who don't and vote by mail? Because I'm not.
No barcode needed.
So the people who are voting by mail are in the system, having presented identification to be in that system,
So-
and then their signature is being
That
cross-checked.
signature that could be from 17 years ago, that doesn't match their signature
And
now?
then it won't be accepted, and they'll have to cure that ballot. And then in our system, the online system, when you're requesting that ballot, you actually have to put the ID number in.
So if I do a mail ballot
Yeah.
and my
You can bring a
life,
student ID, you can bring a medical card, none of those require you to,
documentation,
Federal
none of those
documentation.
require you to prove your citizenship.
a bus
No,
pass,
It's right here.
We're,
It's from your website.
we're talking about requesting a mail ballot through our website. That's what we're talking about.
Right,
You
This
can't,
is to vote,
you
to
can't,
vote.
hold on,
All you
hold
have
on,
is
hold
a
on.
student ID,
Yeah,
a
that's
medical card.
that's an in-person,
On election day.
that's in-person vote.
Doesn't prove
In
your
person.
All right, so
We're
how?
talking about